Of all the subcultures in the climbing world, few are more prideful than English Gritstone. Called God's own rock and built on a strict ethical system, Gritstone is a style of climbing based on scary, delicate moves, long runouts, and dangerous falls. Gritstone climbers can sometimes have a certain amount of haughtiness in their local crags. For years, they claimed that the strange style and high degree of commitment made Gritstone different, and that normal climbers, so-called Gritstone virgins, were bound to struggle on English routes no matter how strong they were in other disciplines. In 2008, this belief would be put to the test when a team of elite Americans packed their gear, crossed the pond, and took on the challenge of some of the hardest and most dangerous single-pitch climbs in the world. Hey everyone, welcome to Climbing Lore, a series of short stories from around the climbing world. It's like real rock, except I can't afford a cameraman. Today we're going to be looking at Alex Honnold and Kevin Jorgensen's 2008 trip to England, where they took on the island's famed Gritstone routes. To understand why this trip was a big deal, you first need to understand the near-mythical status of Gritstone climbing. A unique niche within the climbing world, Gritstone style is built around a few key elements: incredibly high-quality rock, scary runouts, and insecure moves. First, let's talk about the rock. Called God's own rock, English Gritstone is a rough type of sandstone formed by the compression of minerals over about 300 million years and shaped since then by eons of erosion. The end result is a challenge that is bound to fire up any climber, a series of short routes with strong, grippy rock, minimal protection, and an emphasis on slopers, smears, and tiny edges. When speaking about this type of climbing, mountain guide Libby Peterson said, "There's nowhere to hide on grit. It flatters all your strengths but exposes all your weaknesses in three crucial areas: jamming, laybacking, and smearing. If you want to learn about climbing cracks, arêtes, or slabs, there's no better place to head." On top of the difficult committing style, in which you need to trust your feet and rely on friction instead of grip strength, Gritstone is incredibly dangerous with minimal protection and a deep-set aversion to bolting. Routes are run out and often come with the danger of ground falls, to the point where climbers will sometimes use crash pads even when they're roped in. All of this put together means that British climbers have a certain amount of pride in their local routes. To them, it's a completely different classification of the sport. You might send hard on granite or limestone, and you might be a really good climber, but until you've come over and tried your mettle on grit, you can't claim that you have what it takes to keep up on God's own rock. Because of this, Gritstone has developed its own grading scale, the E-system. The E-system is designed to be a hybrid model that takes into account not only the difficulty of the climb, but also the danger of the runouts, the quality of the protection, and the risk of a fall. For years, this unique style and hard-to-compare grading system added a certain level of mythos to English Gritstone. Good Gritstone climbers were held in their own regard and could say with a certain amount of pride that even though they might not send exactly as hard as their American contemporaries, their style came with its own set of difficulties that would stump the best climbers in the world at the time. In 2008, a super team of established American talent decided to answer this challenge and put to rest the question: how well could regular climbing strength be translated onto Gritstone? Headlining this team were the two climbers perhaps best suited to this task: Alex Honnold, master of free soloing, and Kevin Jorgensen, a noted highball boulderer. Both of these climbers had styles that seemed like they would translate well onto grit. Methodical, delicate, and not overly reliant on power-based moves, with a penchant for keeping it cool when faced with big fall potential. No one really knew what would happen, but the expectation is that they would do well. Turns out, doing well is an understatement. Kevin and Alex arrived, took a moment to get their feet wet, and then they went on a rampage, lining up and ticking off some of the country's hardest climbs in a matter of days. Their hit list included New Testament E8, The Promise E10, Parthian Shot E9 ground up, Gaia E8 flash, and Meshuggah E9 free solo. These climbs are some of the classic test pieces of the area. You need to send them if you want to be considered among the upper echelon of Gritstone climbers, and it usually takes people years of training and dedication to do so. Alex and Kevin were taking them off in short order. The Gritstone climbing world was shocked. This area was mythical. For years, it had turned away good climbers with its difficult, unique style and danger, and yet these two Americans weren't faced at all by the difficulties that it presented. The Gritstone didn't go down without a fight though. Jorgensen took a terrifying whip off the top of Gaia that could easily have resulted in serious injury if his belayer hadn't done everything right. He sent the route later, but there was some solace in the fact that Gritstone's most famous test piece didn't just roll over for the Americans. The variation finish of Gaia, known as Harder Faster, put up even more of a fight. This route, graded E9, is harder climbing than Gaia, and a fall from the crux would certainly lead you to decking. Alex Honnold checked out the route, presumably on top rope, and said it was a super proud line that was maybe his favorite of the trip, except it was, in his own words, too scary to climb. Now, I can't comment firsthand, but I have to imagine that this was a little bit vindicating for English Gritstone climbers. Here's Alex Honnold, the greatest free soloer of all time, known for his fearlessness, saying that Harder Faster spooked him to the point where he never sent it. It's definitely an understandable thing to be scared of. Harder Faster was first climbed by Charlie Woodburn in 2003 and has only been repeated twice. Once by lucky chance, and recently by redeemed child phenom James Peterson. To understand how difficult this route is, look at Mike Weeks, established Gritstone crusher, trying it. He takes a glance at the crux, doesn't like the foot, and has to downclimb a few weeks before taking a massive whip. It's a committing, terrifying route, and it had to feel a little good that even the super team of Americans didn't want anything to do with it. Another mark on the record of Alex and Kevin was the Groove E11. First sent by James Pearson, this route is to me the biggest question mark of the entire trip. Jorgensen is credited with the second ascent, and he even downgraded it from E11 to E8, one of the factors that led to Pearson's exile from the world of Gritstone climbing. The thing is though, Kevin never sent the route. He did the lower crux, sure, but then he found a variation for the top after judging the upper boulder problem to be impossible after 4 days of working it. Instead, he went around the upper crux before rejoining the route at the top. Now, I know climbing ethics are weird and Gritstone is its own world, but I have to say, I kind of agree with what Pearson said about this. If you take a variation this large, you didn't send the route. You can't claim a second ascent. It's important to note that Jorgensen doesn't dispute this. He freely admits that he never did the crux. However, he did downgrade the route, saying that he had taken a controlled fall from the upper section and had been caught safely. Without ground fall potential, according to Kevin, the group couldn't really justify its mind-shatteringly high grade of E11. Again, I haven't touched the rock or anything remotely this difficult, so I don't know, but it seems to me that if you don't climb a route, you can't downgrade it. Jorgensen based his grade off of how the boulder problem felt on top rope compared to other routes he had climbed. This adds some legitimacy, sure, but I don't know, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth to downgrade a route by such a massive margin without ever having climbed the original Ascensionists' line. So, at the end of the day, the American team were definitely pushed to their limits by the English Gritstone. They had some insanely impressive ascents, sure, flashes and ground-up sends that would have been thought to be impossible, but they also had some scary falls, some tough moments, and some routes that they didn't climb because of how scary they were. I think the most important thing, though, is how complimentary they were of the area, the rock, and the climbing style. The routes didn't stump them in the way that people might have expected, but they definitely fell in love with the area, and really that's what counts most. That, and the fact that Alex didn't send Harder Faster, and the pride of English Gritstone lives on. Alright guys, that's everything for today. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if there are any other moments in climbing history that you want me to do a video on. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time.